Boys and girls, today I want to talk about EQing your mix bus. I want to talk about two magic frequencies that will make your mixes sound better, sound more transparent especially. I want to show you two EQ moves that I use all the time. The first one is all about making your low end tighter, more transparent, less boomy, less resonant. This is something that I do all the time, a bread and butter EQ move that I do on pretty much every mix. The other one is something a little more special. This one is all about pulling your vocals out of the mix a little bit more, making them shine, giving them a little more space. Both EQ moves, by the way, are not boosting anything. We're only pulling out frequencies, which most of the time is smarter anyway. Before we get started, here's a little disclaimer. A EQ on your mix bus is something very powerful, but it's also highly seductive. You gotta be careful with that. I usually recommend to not go higher or lower than, let's say, 2.5 dB roughly. If you have to EQ more on your mix bus, let's say you have to pull out 5 dB of low end to avoid boominess, then you should probably revisit the single tracks of your mix and find the origin of that problem somewhere else. Then you should have a look at the kick drum or the bass drum or the guitars and find out where that boominess is coming from. So mix bus EQ is powerful, but it's not going to solve all your problems. You need a good mix, and then you can fine tune it with an EQ on your mix bus. Here comes the creepy part. What you are about to watch is a snippet from a 1 hour long mix bus EQ course that you can find in my academy for $19. I'm going to show you two frequencies now, two go-to frequencies, but the course is much longer and shows you all the, let's call them bread and butter frequency moves that I do on my mixes. So if you are interested in learning more, check out the link below. Let's get started. So let's start with our first example. Right here I have a track from a Czech band that I work with a lot called Dymytry. It's the instrumental mix I did from one song of their latest album, and it's a pretty good example of a good sounding mix that needs some treatment. So this is the raw bounce without any master bus processing, and it sounds like this. The next thing, and maybe the most important band, is a bell filter that I use to get rid of muddy frequencies in the upper bass range, lower mid-range. And that is usually between 150 and 250 hertz. This is a frequency region that sits way above of what we regard as a good sounding, nice, deep low end. It's actually the upper bass range that always sounds a little resonant, where you get the overtones of the main fundamentals, and that always sounds a little out of control, a little boomy, and not nice, not desirable. So there's not a lot of information there that we think sounds great. One exception is the main snare punch, as you will hear later. But this is a great EQ region to remove some energy from the mix. This will typically make everything sound a little more clear. And depending on the mix, you can go up to 250 or something. In this case, I will go pretty low because I feel like there's a lot of build up here around 150. And if we just cut out a little too much, you will understand what's happening. Have a listen to the main transients of the kick drum and the snare, for example. They become a lot more clear if you remove some energy here. It also feels like the guitars sound a little wider. It feels like the guitars get a little more attack. Everything just gets a little more modern, a little more defined.
But we're not making anything sound thinner, because what we feel and regard as real low end usually sits below 100 Hertz. It's here. This is where the fundamentals of the bass guitar and the kick drum live. And not here. Around 200 you have the whole kind of stuff. And I usually go for a Q between 1 and 1.5, so I don't make it too narrow. I guarantee you, on 95% of all metal mixes, this region is kind of overpowered. There are just a lot of frequencies. Even if you make the drum sound great, the guitar sound great, and the bass sound great, they just add up a little too much. And that's the reason I'm showing you this. So pulling out a little energy around here usually makes your mix sound better.
So talking about cleaning up the lower mid-range, there's one more thing I want to show you. We've already talked about this frequency here around 200. That is just perfect to make things sound a little more transparent. We're now listening to another mix, Nihilist Against War, I guess. Also a really nice song. So you see, around 200, that is exactly the region to clean things up. But be careful, especially with your snare punch. And then there's another frequency that is really interesting for cleaning things up, and if you can't fix it in the mix, and that is the frequency around 500 Hertz. So if you reduce that on a final mix, it usually makes the vocals, especially clean vocals, sound a lot more transparent. I remember when I started working at a studio where they did some kind of Schlager and dance floor music, but I learned a lot, terrible music. I was 19 or something, and when they worked on that music, they were always looking at a frequency analyzer, trying to find the main frequency of the vocals, and that was always around 500, 400, 500, like that. And then they pulled out that frequency on a lot of other instruments to make the vocals shine, or even on the final mix. And I remember that, and it actually works. So if you just focus on the vocals and how much more transparent they sound in the mix and how much less they get covered by other stuff, if I pull out 500, this also works on harsh vocals. Suddenly the vocals have their own place. Because all the honk 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 stuff from the guitars is pushed into the back. And if you push this, the vocals really get like covered by cloudy guitars. But it's usually even more impressive on clean vocals when they are fighting with distorted guitars. So let's wait for the chorus. So what we take away is this. The frequency range between 150 and 250 is great for cleaning up your mix, removing some energy there, which just make things sound more transparent. Don't go too far. If you have to do more than 2 or 2.5 dB, it's usually better to revisit the mix and change something there and pull some frequencies out from single instruments. And then we have the frequency range around 500. Pull something out there and it just shifts the vocals a little more in place, and it kind of separates them a little more from the distorted guitars. And we all know that vocals are always fighting distorted guitars. I hope you enjoyed a little trip into EQ land, and I hope you could learn something. Let me know in the comments, please. Again, if you are interested in getting the full course, and if you want to see how I treat the mids and the highs and everything else, check out the link below to that course. It's $19. It's roughly 1 hour of what you've just seen. Just more of it. Isn't that nice? Or for the smart kids out there, just become a member of Kohle Audio Kult and get your hands on all our courses from day one. That is much smarter. And also free plugins and free samples and free IRs and all the fun stuff. And, you know, the Ermin mastering course, the Nolly drum course, all the multi-tracks we have, all the fun stuff, right? Once again, be careful with the Mix EQ. It's a dangerous tool. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to this lovely channel. I should say that in the beginning of the videos. But if you are still watching, that means I'm probably not that annoying to you, maybe. So you better subscribe, ring the bell, and we will see each other again. We will meet again. See you in hell, motherfuckers. Bye-bye.